Story 1. Coming. The snow started falling when it wasn't supposed to. The weather app on my phone showed a clear sky and 0% chance of snow. The radar was empty. But outside, my sliding glass door, thick flakes were dropping under the parking lot lights, covering the asphalt in a white layer that hadn't been there a few minutes earlier. The cars were already turning pale. Snow collected along the curb and around the tires. The sky above the buildings was still clear. No clouds, just flakes falling straight down into the light. I grabbed my jacket, pulled on my boots, and stepped outside. The cold air hit immediately. Snowflakes landed on my sleeves and melted against the fabric. The parking lot was quiet, no engines running. No doors opening. The only sound was the crunch under my boots as I crossed toward the narrow trail behind the building. A small metal sign marked the entrance where the asphalt ended, and the dirt path began. Snow was already building along its edges. Beyond the sign, the path disappeared between a drainage ditch and a line of cottonwood trees. I turned on my headlamp and stepped onto the trail. The sound of the world changed immediately. Snow softened everything. My footsteps made a slow crunch with every step. The snow on the ground was smooth and untouched. No footprints, no bike tracks, no dog prints, just a flat, white surface stretching ahead between the trees. I walked deeper into the trail. The parking lot lights faded behind me. The only light left was the narrow beam of my headlamp and a faint blue glow from an office building far beyond the trees. Snowflakes passed through the beam, bright in the light. The ditch beside the trail looked like a dark cut in the snow. The wooden fences on the other side were silent and still. I continued forward until the trail curved around a large cottonwood tree that leaned over the path. That was when I heard the laugh. It was short and high. A child's giggle carried through the cold air ahead of me. I stopped walking. The sound ended immediately. I turned slowly and swept the beam of my headlamp across the trail, the ditch, and the fence line. Nothing moved. The snow on the ground remained smooth, except for my own footprints. I waited for another sound. None came. I kept walking. The cottonwood tree leaned over the trail with a thick branch, stretching horizontally above the path, about 20 feet off the ground. Snow had collected along the top of the branch in a bright white line. My headlamp followed that line across the wood. Then it stopped. Someone was sitting on it. A small shape crouched low on the branch. A boy, maybe 9 or 10 years old. Gray hoodie, jeans dark with wet snow, sneakers with white rubber edges. His feet were planted flat on the branch, and his hands gripped the wood between his knees. He had been balancing there for a long time. When my headlamp reached his face, he didn't react. He stared down at me and smiled. The smile stayed fixed across his face. His eyes were open wide and unblinking. Snowflakes landed on his hair and shoulders, but he didn't brush them away. I stepped closer to the trunk and lowered the beam of my headlamp to the base of the tree. The snow under it was completely smooth. No footprints, no marks, no place where anyone had climbed. I looked back up at him. "Hey," I said, "what are you doing up there?" The boy didn't answer. The smile stayed exactly the same. Snow continued falling through the beam of the headlamp. "It's freezing," I said. "You shouldn't be up there." The boy tilted his head slightly to one side and spoke. His voice drifted straight down through the snow. "It's easy," he said. "If you don't fall." I moved closer to the tree and checked the ground again. The snow around the trunk remained untouched. I looked back up at him. "How did you get up there?" I said. The boy didn't respond. Instead, he slowly stood up on the branch. He released his hands from the wood and straightened his legs until he was standing upright, 20 feet above the trail. His arms hung loosely at his sides. The branch flexed slightly under his weight, and small clumps of snow slid off the top. "Hey," I said. "Stop. You're going to fall." He looked down at me. The smile widened slightly across his face. "Watch," he said. Then he leaned backward, not slipping, not losing balance. He chose to fall. His body tipped straight back until he was horizontal above the snow. Then, he dropped. His body fell through the beam of my headlamp and slammed into the ground with a heavy thump. Snow burst upward around the impact. I ran toward the spot immediately. My boots punched deep into the snow as I moved. "Stay still," I shouted. "Don't move." I reached the place where he had landed and stopped. The snow was crushed into the shape of a body, a deep outline pressed into the white surface, but the outline was empty. No body, no clothing, no movement. I swept the headlamp across the ground around it, no tracks leading away, no marks in the snow except my own footprints, from the path to the impact spot. The snow continued falling into the hollow where something had landed. Then a voice spoke beside my ear, cool, too slow again. Before I could turn, something slammed into my back and wrapped both arms around my neck. The weight drove me forward, one step. Thin arms tightened across my throat, and small hands grabbed the collar of my jacket. The fingers were cold and rigid. Legs locked around my waist from behind. The smell of wet fabric filled the air near my face. A high, uneven laugh vibrated against the back of my neck. I grabbed the arms around my throat and tried to pull them away. The wrists felt hard and stiff inside the sleeves. The grip tightened. The pressure against my throat increased. My boots slid across the snow as I tried to keep my balance. The headlamp beam shook wildly across the trees. I stumbled backward until my shoulders struck the trunk of the cottonwood tree. The impact slammed my back against the bark. The arms around my neck jolted. The grip loosened for a moment. I threw my weight backward again into the tree with all the force I had. Something crushed between my back and the trunk. Then the weight disappeared. I staggered forward and grabbed my throat. Cold air rushed back into my lungs. I turned quickly and aimed the headlamp behind me. The trail was empty. My footprints were scattered across the snow where I had struggled near the tree. The trunk showed a fresh scrape in the bark where my jacket had struck it. Beyond that, the snow remained smooth and untouched. I stood there, breathing in the cold air, while the snow continued falling around me. Then I looked down at the ground beside my footprints. For a moment, I saw another set of tracks beside mine, smaller prints, close together, matching the direction of my steps along the trail. Snow drifted across them almost immediately. The shapes blurred. The wind shifted through the trees. The smaller prints vanished under fresh snow until the trail looked smooth again. Only my footprints remained. I turned toward the faint glow of the parking lot lights through the trees and started walking back the way I came. Halfway to the entrance, the laugh sounded again. It came from behind me. Close. Story 2. The camera alert flashed at 2:14 in the morning. Motion detected. The screen showed the empty parking lot under the yellow lights. I opened the replay clip while sitting in bed. The police had already come and gone earlier that week. They walked the path behind the houses where I told them everything had happened. They asked the same questions more than once. Where exactly did the boy fall? Where exactly did the attack happen? How far from the tree? They looked at the snow and the trail and the empty ground. There were no extra footprints anywhere. Only the ones I had made running back toward the parking lot. One officer stood under the cottonwood branch and pointed his light upward for a few seconds. Nothing was there. They searched the ditch and the yards behind the fences. No one found a child. No one found clothing. No one found blood in the snow. After 20 minutes, they told me the same thing people say when they think someone imagined something in the dark. They said maybe someone had been playing a prank. Maybe a teenager had climbed the tree earlier before the snow started and jumped down. Maybe I had slipped and hit my head on the trunk and confused the order of events. I did not argue. I just went back inside my house and locked the sliding door. The snow melted the next afternoon, and the trail behind the houses looked normal again. The smooth white surface was gone. The footprints were gone. Only the dirt path and the trees remained. For a couple of days, nothing unusual happened. Then the camera notification appeared on my phone. My back door camera faced the parking lot and the beginning of the trail entrance. It usually triggered when someone walked past the building or when headlights crossed the lot at night. The alert came at 2:14 in the morning. Motion detected. I opened the camera feed while sitting in bed. The screen showed the empty parking lot under the yellow lights. Snow was gone now and the asphalt looked dark again. I watched the replay clip the camera had saved. The video started normally. The lot was empty for the first few seconds. Then something moved near the trail entrance. A small shape stepped out from the darkness between the trees. It was a child. The same gray hoodie, the same jeans, the same small sneakers. He walked slowly out of the trail and stopped under the parking lot light. His face, tilted upward toward the camera, mounted above my sliding door. The distance was far enough that the camera could not show clear details of his face, but the shape of the smile was obvious, even in the grainy night video. The boy stood there for nearly 10 seconds, looking directly at the camera lens. Then he turned around and walked back into the trees, the same way he had come. I watched the clip again, then again. The timestamp at the bottom of the video said 2:14 a.m. I checked the live camera view. The trail entrance was empty again. The boy was gone. The next morning, I walked outside and crossed the parking lot to the trail entrance. The ground was dry dirt now, with patches of loose gravel. I looked carefully at the path where the camera had recorded the boy walking. There were no small footprints in the dirt, no tracks leading in or out of the trees. The ground looked untouched. That night, the camera alert came again. 2:12 a.m. Motion detected. I opened the replay clip. The same thing happened. The boy stepped out of the trail entrance. He walked into the parking lot light and stopped in the exact same place as the night before. He looked up at the camera again. The smile remained fixed on his face. Then he turned and walked back into the trees. The following night, the alert appeared again. 2:13 a.m. The same motion, the same location, the same slow walk out of the trees, the same 10 seconds standing under the light while looking directly at the camera. Then the same turn back into the darkness of the trail. I watched the recordings over and over. Every night the time was almost identical. Every night the boy appeared from the trail. Every night he stopped in the exact same spot under the light. Every night, he looked up at the camera. On the fourth night, I decided to wait for him. I turned off the lights inside the house and sat in the dark near the sliding door. My phone was open with the live camera feed on the screen. The parking lot outside was empty. The trail entrance looked like a black opening between the trees. The clock on my phone changed from 2:11 to 2:12. Then, the camera alert appeared. Motion detected. I looked at the live video feed. Nothing moved for the first few seconds. Then the boy stepped out of the trees again. Gray hoodie, jeans, sneakers. The same slow walk across the dirt path toward the light. I watched him through the camera and through the glass door at the same time. The camera image showed him approaching the light, but outside the glass door I could not see anyone standing there. The parking lot looked empty. I leaned closer to the door and stared at the spot under the light where the camera showed the boy standing. There was nothing there. I looked down at the phone again. On the screen, the boy was clearly visible under the light, looking directly at the camera. I looked back through the glass door. The parking lot was still empty. No child. No movement, only the yellow light and the dark asphalt. I looked down at the phone again. The boy slowly raised one hand. His finger pointed upward toward the camera. Then, he pointed at something behind the camera. I turned my head slowly toward the sliding door above me where the camera was mounted. Nothing was there. I looked back down at the phone screen. The boy's arm was still extended. His finger remained pointed toward the camera lens. Then he lowered his arm and turned back toward the trail. The recording ended. I checked the live camera view again. The parking lot remained empty. I stepped outside and walked to the exact place where the boy had been standing in the video. The asphalt felt dry under my boots. I looked up at the camera, mounted above the door. Then, I looked down at the ground. A small, wet footprint appeared beside my boot. Then another one formed beside it. A second footprint appeared in front of me. Then another. A line of small, wet shoe prints slowly appeared on the asphalt, moving away from the trail entrance and stopping directly below the camera mounted above the sliding door. I followed the prints with my eyes until they reached the wall of the building. The last print appeared directly under the camera. Then, the trail of prints stopped. I slowly lifted my head and looked at the camera above me. The small red recording light was on. The camera was still watching the empty parking lot. Then the phone in my hand vibrated again. A new motion alert appeared on the screen. Motion detected. Location: backdoor camera. I opened the live camera feed. The image showed the parking lot from above, the asphalt, the trail entrance, the wall of the building, and the top of my own head standing directly under the camera. Then, the boy's face slowly leaned into the camera view from behind the lens. Story 3. The camera was unplugged, but my phone still detected motion. The camera was sitting on the kitchen table, exactly where I had left it earlier that night. The power cable disconnected from the wall, and the small red recording light completely dark. It had no electricity and no reason to be sending alerts. Yet my phone vibrated in my hand, and the notification appeared on the screen. Motion detected. Backdoor camera. I stared at the message for several seconds before opening it. A short video clip loaded automatically. The angle looked exactly the same as it always did. The parking lot behind my house, the sliding glass door, and the narrow trail entrance disappearing into the trees. The parking lot was empty. Nothing moved. No cars. No people. The video ended after a few seconds. I played it again. The same empty frame. The same quiet lot under the yellow lights. I slowly lifted my eyes from the phone and looked at the camera on the kitchen table. It was still unplugged. I did not sleep after that. I left the camera where it was and locked the sliding door. Every light in the house stayed off. The bedroom was completely dark, except for the faint orange glow of the streetlights bleeding through the blinds. I checked the time on my phone before setting it down on the nightstand. 2:11 in the morning. The house was silent. The refrigerator hummed softly in the kitchen, and the heater kicked on for a few seconds before shutting off again. Then, the silence returned. I closed my eyes and lay still in the dark. A few seconds later, I heard the sound, a light tap against the glass door. My eyes opened immediately. The bedroom was still dark. I stayed still and listened. The sound came again. Tap, 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 tap. Tap, slow knocks against the glass. I sat up and looked toward the hallway that led to the kitchen. The rest of the house remained completely dark. No lights, no movement. The tapping stopped. I got out of bed and walked slowly down the hallway. The floor creaked under my feet as I crossed the living room. The sliding glass door came into view at the far end of the kitchen. Yellow parking lot light glowed through the glass. Nothing moved outside. I stepped closer. The parking lot looked empty. The trail entrance between the trees was a black opening beyond the light. The camera above the door still hung where it always had, but the cable dangled loose beside it. I stood there for several seconds, listening. Nothing came. I turned away from the door and started walking back toward the hallway. That was when I heard the laugh again. A short, high giggle. The same sound I had heard on the trail during the snowstorm. I turned back immediately and looked through the glass. At first I saw nothing. Then a small shape stepped slowly out of the darkness of the trail entrance. The boy walked toward the parking lot light, exactly the way he had in the camera footage. Gray hoodie, jeans, small sneakers, the same clothes, the same slow steps across the asphalt. Snow was not falling now, and the ground was completely dry, but the way he moved was identical to the recordings. He stopped under the yellow light and lifted his head toward the sliding door. This time, there was no camera between us, only the glass. I could see his face clearly. The same wide smile stretched across it. His eyes stayed open and completely still. He did not blink. I stood inside the kitchen, looking at him through the glass. He stood outside, looking directly at me. Neither of us moved for several seconds. Then, the boy slowly raised his arm and pointed toward the trail behind him. I did not move. He kept pointing toward the trees, as if waiting for me to follow. After a moment, he lowered his arm and stepped backward into the darkness of the trail entrance. He disappeared between the trees. The parking lot looked empty again. I waited several minutes before unlocking the sliding door and stepping outside. Cold air moved into the kitchen behind me as I crossed the parking lot toward the trail entrance. The asphalt felt dry under my boots. I stopped at the edge of the path and turned on the flashlight on my phone. The beam lit the dirt trail and the trunks of the cottonwood trees ahead. The ditch beside the path looked like a deep shadow. No movement anywhere. I stepped onto the trail and followed the beam deeper between the trees. After a few steps, the light reached something in the dirt. A footprint, small, the shape of a child's sneaker pressed clearly into the soil. I moved the light forward again. Another footprint appeared, then another. A line of small prints leading deeper along the trail. I followed them slowly with the flashlight. The prints continued between the trees for several yards, before stopping suddenly in the middle of the path. The last print pointed straight ahead into the darkness. I lifted the flashlight and aimed it further down the trail. The beam reached the large cottonwood tree where the branch hung across the path. The same tree from the night of the snowstorm. The branch stretched over the trail nearly 20 feet above the ground. I slowly raised the flashlight beam toward it. The boy was standing on the branch again. Gray hoodie, jeans, small sneakers, the same wide smile across his face. He looked down at me from the branch without blinking. My hand tightened around the phone as the light shook slightly. The boy slowly crouched down on the branch, the same way he had before. His hands gripped the wood between his knees. His head tilted slightly to one side. Then he spoke. His voice drifted down through the trees. "You came back." I stepped backward on the trail. The beam of the flashlight stayed fixed on the branch above me. The boy's smile widened again. "Watch," he said. I turned and ran toward the parking lot lights between the trees. My boots pounded against the dirt path as I moved between the trunks. The yellow glow of the parking lot grew closer ahead. Then I heard a second set of footsteps behind me. Fast, small, closing the distance with every step. I ran harder toward the light. The sound stayed directly behind me, on the trail. I reached the edge of the parking lot and turned around with the flashlight raised. The trail behind me looked empty again. The trees stood motionless in the dark. No boy, no movement, no sound. I stood there breathing heavily and staring into the trees. Then my phone vibrated in my hand. A notification appeared on the screen. Motion detected. Back door camera. I looked up toward the sliding door of my house. The camera above the door was still unplugged and hanging loose. The red recording light remained dark. I looked back down at the phone. A video clip had already loaded. The image showed the parking lot from the camera angle above the door, the asphalt, the trail entrance, the wall of the house. Then the boy stepped into the frame from behind me. He stood directly behind my back in the video and looked up at the camera with the same wide smile. Then, he slowly raised one hand and pointed directly at me. And if you ever hear footsteps behind you on a trail that should be empty, don't stop to check who it is. Just keep walking and get somewhere with light. Because sometimes the thing following you isn't trying to catch up. It's just making sure you don't stop.